So, ladies and gentlemen, right now is with great pleasure, I would like to introduce you to our first guest this weekend. And he was chosen for a reason. He was chosen because of his contributions from the 1980s art scene in New York City right up till now. He splits his time half and half between New York City and Italy, two tremendous, important art places. So we're gonna go to Rome right now and visit the great East Village star, Mr. Mark Kostabi. Mark, are you there?
Yes, Jordan, thank you.
How are you, sir?
Oh, very happy. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Always a pleasure to see you virtually or in person. So you are in Rome, you're in your studio in Rome right now, is that right?
I am, and I'm enjoying it.
I believe it, and well deserved. Now, I got to ask Mark, of course, Italy and Rome, of course, and New York, huge, huge, huge collections of history of art. Does your style change? Because I know you spend about half the year in New York and half the year in Rome. Will your paintings be different depending on which studio you're working out of?
When I'm in Rome, my art tends to be more a celebration of sensuality and just the pure bliss of being alive as a human being, more colorful. When I'm in New York, my art is more intellectual, more like social commentary about the corporate world, about technology's influence on humanity, and I find that equally interesting. So there's a little yin-yang thing going on too.
And that's something that, you just mentioned it, social commentary is something that your art has always had. Even though your figures are faceless, they're always telling a story. And sometimes it's romance, and sometimes it's corporate, sometimes it's greed. I mean, even during the pandemic, you started putting masks on some of your faces. So the commentary and social satire has always been a part of your art.
Yes, and even in the painting you have right next to you, that's called The Mystery of Creation, and it's a female painter putting some chartreuse paint on her plate palette, and she has like kind of a red thumb, and her brushes are ready to paint with. It's not really, thank you for the close-up, it's not really total social commentary, but it's a reflection on the creative process.
The creative process. Now, so many artists, art comes and goes, as does music, as does literature, and anything in the arts. But for you to have the longevity that you've had, again, launching in New York City when that was really the prime of New York, the 1980s. When you think of New York City and the 80s art, that's pretty much where all the most famous artists of our country came out of. So to succeed there must have been very difficult. I mean, the competition and just being in the heart and the pulse of the entire art world. I mean, tell us a little bit about that, the New York art scene in the 1980s.
Okay, first of all, it's still the center of the art world. Yeah. I mean, it was in the 80s.
But it's maintained, yeah.
It's still the most important city in the world for contemporary art. And if an artist wants to have a successful career, he or she would benefit from living there. And I learned that in art school, and it probably is difficult, but I was so passionately, emboldened by my parents, perhaps, because they were Eastern European immigrants who moved to the United States after World War II from Estonia to pursue the American dream, and through their kids, they realized it. And I was just kind of an outsider and just hell-bent and determined on becoming a rich and famous artist. And I learned in art school that rule number 1 is, rule number 2 is live in New York. I learned the 6 rules. Living in New York is super important. But after I succeeded in conquering the New York art world in the mid-'80s, I learned that almost every other artist who became successful followed the same 6 rules.
Well, there is a song about that, right? If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. And that's
totally true. Now I can live anywhere in the world that I want to. I've chosen Rome as my second home because it's the most beautiful city in the world.
It is gorgeous.
It is gorgeous, yes. And I go back and forth. I'm here when the weather is theoretically nicer than in New York, where we've had an extreme heat wave this summer. But that's okay because it's so hot outside. I just stay in my wonderfully air-conditioned studio and produce. make drawing and paintings. Yeah.
That's where we like you, in your studio and producing.
Well, yes, Jordan, because thanks to you, there is an unquenchable desire for my art, and I am having the only difficulty in my life, the only problem, it's a first world problem, is that I can't keep up with the incredible demand for my art, thanks largely to you.
Well, it's been going on, and as I said, decade after decade after decade. I mean, we saw you, you know, when Oprah was the biggest show on television, you're appearing on Oprah. When Lifestyles and the Rich and the Famous, you're on Lifestyles, the Rich and Famous. When Miami Vice was the biggest show, you're on Miami Vice. When the biggest art collectors in the world, like Bill Gates, you know, him and I believe still to date, he's your biggest collector, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, he bought 38 paintings.
38 paintings.
Yeah, but to be precise, there are some collectors. In fact, some Park West clients who have bought more Kostabis. Wow. Phyllis Cohen, for example, the beautiful woman who loves the cats.
Yeah,
she might have more than that, but I'm sure there are other Park West clients that have more than 38 paintings, and for sure some Italians too here, like a collector friend of mine here, Gino Natoni. He's bought over 200.
200 Kostabis.
Yeah, well, yeah. Once they get the bug, you know, they.
Well, I know that's what's great thing about your art. It translates wherever we are. You and I just had a tremendously successful show. We did a VIP event over in Europe this summer, which was amazing. We brought collectors and you got to meet them, and we did a live auction. It was fantastic. We do shows here in the United States. We've done shows in our galleries. Your art seems to translate wherever we take it. It's not geographical. It's not regional.
Yes, and that's because I paint faceless figures, which are universal beings. It's a universal visual language that transcends cultural and racial boundaries and national boundaries. So everyone can read their own story into it. Like the painting next to you could be a painter getting ready to do some chartreuse painting, or maybe she's preparing some strange pasta dessert. It's up to the interpretation.
It is beyond borders, says the Estonian American Italian. Is there anything you could show us you've been working on there over in Rome?
I noticed you looked at your watch, so we have time for it. Here, I'll show you two small paintings that I'm very proud of. Brand new paintings. This one, okay, it's
one of your romantic pieces.
Yeah, it's about 12. Thank you. It's 12 by 10 inches. It's called The Swoon of Eternal Bliss. The Swoon of Eternal Bliss.
Beautiful small painting.
It's a small painting, yes. It's not stretched yet.
But powerful. Those colors just pop.
Thank you. And it's a love scene. This is the kind of painting, if it was at one of your auctions on a ship, there would be intense competitive bidding. This I've seen.
I've seen that show before.
Seen that show before. Here's another one. This one's called Tropical Ecstasy.
Oh, look at that.
Same size. 30 by 25 centimeters, or about 12 by 10 inches. It's oil on canvas. I just finished it. It's
almost like your art is always like little pop, little surreal, but I'm almost seeing cubism in that piece. Like a little bit of, you've really broken up the background there.
Yes, yeah, cubism and futurism. The Italians were inspired by Picasso and Braque, who invented cubism, and they came up with futurism, which was like the next step. So that's Tropical Ecstasy.
Wow.
And then would you like to see a few of my new drawings?
I'd love to. Your drawings are some of my favorite. Just the detail you get in them are amazing.
Well, this one has detail, that's for sure. This one is called Timeless Moment. And it's a really interesting, good watercolor paper. There's the back. You can see.
And that's just done with a graphite pencil mark?
Yes, it is. It is, yeah, mixed media. There's a little bit of spray painting involved too.
Wow, look at that. That is beautiful.
It's a mixed media drawing, maybe drawing / painting. And there's these couple embracing under a singular umbrella. And then there's another couple in the foreground. And then over here, there's a brain, which is, a symbol of intelligence. Oh, and then there's another couple down here watching this TV, which you have to see in person. You have to really see these drawings in person to fully appreciate them. And then here's another one called Prelude to the Hypnotic Tango. Do you know what the Hypnotic Tango was?
I do not.
All right, there was a disco song from the 80s by a band called My Mind, called Hypnotic Tango.
Okay.
There's no reason why you would need to know that because you're a young person. You were probably born in the 90s.
Sounds like you and Studio 54 inspired that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Studio 54, because I had the great honor of knowing Andy Warhol and others that hung out at Studio 54. So this is a brand new drawing called Prelude to the Hypnotic Tango. And then I do these little, very small drawings too.
Ooh, look at that.
There's a horizontal drawing. It's called Time Has a Question. And it's a couple looking at this large television screen on their modernist sofa, and their cat is about to go into the TV screen. And then there's like a New York in the background and 80s energy here and a checkerboard floor at the bottom. I'm really, really happy about this little drawing.
Wow.
Time Has a Question.
Time Has a Question.
Yes.
The Hypnotic Tango. I'll remember that one.
My mind, got to look it up.
Well, I think one of the rules that most art critics agree to is that you can't paint great if you aren't a great draftsman, and your drawings always show your draftsmanship.
Thank you, Jordan.
Well, Mr. Kostabi, thank you for tuning in from Rome. It is always a pleasure. I cannot wait until you get back stateside and get a chance to visit and see each other in person.
Absolutely. It was great to see you in Iceland. Remember, after I got off the ship, I got hit by a car. Remember that?
I do recall. It's hard to forget. But you're here. Looks like you're doing fine.
I'm completely healed, and I'm a new person. I'm more inspired than ever because I understand the fragility of life and the real important things that we should focus on, and that's beauty, love, and sharing our ideas and passion for life with the world and friendship.
And that's
I'm glad that I have you as a friend, Jordan Sitter.
Always a pleasure, and it shows how special you are because there's only about 7 cars in Iceland, and you found one to get hit by. So, anyway, Mark, been a pleasure. Okay. Thank you so much for having us.
All right, Jordan. See you soon.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed that visit to Rome with the great East Village artist, Mr. Mark Kostabi. Tune into his collection. I am telling you, this guy's art, there's a reason it survived the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, 10s, 20s, and now the largest art deal in the world. He's done just fine. He's got collectors like Bill Gates and Aaron Spelling. He's got great institutions around the world, museums. Over 60 great museums in the world permanently host his art, including the Smithsonian, including the Guggenheim, including the MoMA, including the Met. And now Park West is just really starting to take him to the world. Understand, as I mentioned, our relationship started the day the pandemic hit. He was scheduled to get on my ship, a VIP event. It was the cruise that ended March 20th. And on March 20th, there was no more cruising. It ended for about 1.5 years. That was the beginning. So for almost 2 years of this 3-year relationship, we've only been virtual. But now we're getting him out there. Our collectors are meeting him. Our collectors are collecting him. As he said, some collecting dozens of paintings. So ladies and gentlemen, tune into the Mark Kostabi collection. It is fantastic with huge marquee pieces like this, small original drawings. If you can, I always encourage you to look at the originals. We have some beautiful graphics as well. We'll even make those pieces directly from his studio in Rome available if you want. So ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the collection, reach out to your concierge, but look at the art of Mark Kostabi.